167 years. 2 world wars survived. The Great Depression survived. Every financial crisis survived. Then, in one weekend in March 2023, was gone. Sold for $3 billion, a fraction of what it was worth. This is Credit Suisse. It was founded in 1856. 167 years of history. Wars, depressions, financial crises, 2 world wars, the collapse of empires. Credit Suisse had survived all of them. Then in March 2023 it was gone. Acquired in an emergency weekend rescue for $3 billion. A fraction of what it had once been worth. This is the story of how one of the world's most prestigious banks destroyed itself. Scandal by scandal, loss by loss, crisis by crisis, over a period of nearly a decade until there was nothing left to save. Credit Suisse was founded in Zurich in 1856 by Alfred Escher, one of the most powerful figures in Swiss history. Its original purpose was to finance the construction of the Swiss railway network. Over 167 years it grew into one of the largest and most prestigious banks in the world. It managed wealth for the global elite. It advised on the largest corporate transactions in history. It was a symbol of Swiss permanence and reliability. The very name Credit Suisse meant, the credit of Switzerland itself. Then the scandals began. Not one scandal. Not two. A cascade of them, each one more serious than the last, until the bank had no credibility left to lose. In 2012 Credit Suisse paid a fine for helping American clients evade taxes. In 2014 it pleaded guilty to criminal conspiracy charges in the United States, becoming one of the first major banks in modern history to plead guilty to a criminal charge, and paid a fine of $2.6 billion. In 2017 it was fined for helping clients in other countries hide money from their governments. In 2019 it was caught spying on its own employees, including a former executive, using private investigators to follow them in the streets of Zurich. The scandal was so extraordinary, so bizarre, that the CEO at the time was forced to resign. In 2021 2 catastrophic events happened simultaneously. Greensill Capital, a supply chain finance company that Credit Suisse had helped promote to its clients, collapsed suddenly. Credit Suisse had sold $10 billion worth of funds linked to Greensill to its own clients. Those clients lost billions. Then, in the same month, Archegos Capital Management collapsed. Credit Suisse had been one of Archegos' prime brokers, one of the banks that had provided Bill Hwang with the leverage that made his hidden positions possible. When Hwang's positions were liquidated, Credit Suisse was the slowest to sell. It lost $5.5 billion in a single week. $5.5 billion. In 1 week. From one client. 2 disasters in 1 month. The bank's leadership was replaced. New strategies were announced. New management teams were brought in. None of it was enough. In 2022 the Swiss criminal court found Credit Suisse guilty of failing to prevent money laundering by a Bulgarian cocaine trafficking network. It was the first time a major Swiss bank had been convicted of a criminal offense in Switzerland itself. By this point, the pattern was undeniable. This was not a bank that had made one mistake. This was a bank whose culture, at some fundamental level, had broken down. In October 2022, social media speculation about Credit Suisse's financial health triggered a wave of customer withdrawals. The bank lost tens of billions in deposits in a matter of weeks. Emergency reassurances from management made things worse. The harder the bank tried to project confidence, the more concerned its customers became. In 2023 the situation became critical. The collapse of Silicon Valley Bank in March 2023, and the resulting anxiety across the global banking system, caused Credit Suisse depositors to accelerate their withdrawals. In a single week in March 2023, Credit Suisse lost 100 billion Swiss francs in outflows. 100 billion. In 1 week. The Swiss National Bank provided an emergency liquidity line of 50 billion francs. It was not enough to restore confidence. On March 19, 2023, a Sunday, the Swiss government orchestrated an emergency takeover of Credit Suisse by its rival UBS. The deal was done in 72 hours. The price was 3 billion Swiss francs, a fraction of Credit Suisse's book value. 16 billion Swiss francs worth of Credit Suisse's at-one bonds, a type of bank debt, were written down to zero. The bondholders received nothing. The shareholders received almost nothing. 167 years of history, ended over a weekend, in a government-forced sale. The deal required emergency legislation passed by the Swiss government, bypassing normal shareholder approval processes, because there was no time for the normal process. Switzerland, the country synonymous with banking stability, had been forced to arrange the shotgun marriage of its two largest banks in order to prevent a global financial crisis. What happened to the people responsible? The executives who had presided over the cascade of scandals that destroyed Credit Suisse were not criminally charged in relation to the bank's collapse. Several received substantial compensation packages, including bonuses, in the period leading up to the rescue. The Swiss government and regulator FINMA faced intense public criticism for their oversight of the bank, or the lack of it, over the years in which the scandals accumulated. The bondholders who lost 16 billion francs launched legal challenges against the Swiss government, arguing that the write-down had violated their rights and been unlawful. Those challenges were ongoing as of mid-2025. So what is the real lesson of Credit Suisse? Credit Suisse is not a story about one catastrophic failure. It is a story about the slow, cumulative, almost invisible destruction of a culture. Every scandal was manageable on its own. Every fine was payable. Every crisis was survivable. But each one left the bank weaker, less trusted, more vulnerable. Each one made the next scandal easier to happen, because the culture that allows one scandal to happen is the same culture that allows the next one. And by the time the final crisis arrived, in the form of a global banking panic in March 2023, there was no reservoir of trust left. No credibility. No goodwill. Just 167 years of history, and nothing else. The lesson is that institutions do not usually die in a single moment. They die slowly, scandal by scandal, until the moment arrives when the accumulated damage finally becomes visible to everyone at once. That is the capital case. Subscribe to the capital case because the next case is already waiting.